The fluorescent lights of Mercer Holdings hummed their constant note, a sound I'd stopped hearing consciously 3 years ago, but that still managed to trigger the beginning of every headache. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the mechanical precision of someone who'd typed the same report so many times they could do it blindfolded. Client portfolio updates, quarterly projections, meeting schedules that shifted like sand every time Gabriel Freire decided his priorities had changed. I shifted in my ergonomic chair, a luxury that felt less luxurious when you spent 12 hours a day in it, and felt the familiar pressure low in my abdomen. Not pain exactly, more like a persistent reminder that my body wasn't entirely my own anymore. 3 weeks since the test. 3 weeks of hiding morning sickness behind closed bathroom doors and covering dark circles with concealer that never quite matched my skin tone. The carpet beneath my desk was a deep charcoal gray, chosen by some interior designer who'd probably been paid more for selecting it than I made in 6 months. I'd spilled coffee on it twice in my first week as Gabriel's executive secretary. Both times, I'd stayed late scrubbing the stain myself, rather than let building maintenance report it. That instinct to fix my own mistakes before anyone noticed had served me well in this position. "Helena, are you listening?" Gisella's voice pulled me back to the present. She perched on the edge of my desk, her navy pencil skirt perfectly pressed despite it being nearly 6 in the evening. Gisella had worked in accounts for 5 years, and somehow maintained the appearance of someone who started her day at 9 and left at 5, rather than the reality of our 8 to 8 existence. "Sorry," I said, pulling my focus back to her face. "What were you saying?" "I was asking if you're feeling better. You've been pale for weeks." Her dark eyes held genuine concern, the kind that made me want to tell her everything and simultaneously run in the opposite direction. "Is it the flu?" I manufactured a smile, the same one I'd been using for 3 weeks. "Just tired. You know how intense it gets before quarter end." She didn't look convinced, but nodded anyway. "Well, don't let Freire work you to death. I know he's demanding, but even he has to understand human limits." I thought of Gabriel's face the morning after our one catastrophic lapse in judgment. The carefully blank expression he'd worn as he'd adjusted his cufflinks and left my apartment without looking back. We'd maintained perfect professional distance ever since, a performance so convincing I sometimes wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Except I hadn't. The evidence was currently the size of a lentil bean and growing larger every day. "He's fair," I said, which was true in its way. Gabriel demanded excellence but paid well for it. He never asked me to do anything unethical, even if the family business his legitimate holdings supported wasn't exactly pristine. I should finish these reports before he needs them tomorrow. Gisella squeezed my shoulder as she stood. "Take care of yourself, Helena. You're the best secretary this company has ever had. We can't afford to lose you." The irony of her words sat heavy in my chest as she walked away, her heels clicking against the polished floor. I couldn't afford to stay. Not with this secret expanding inside me. Not with Gabriel Freire's child growing in a body that betrayed me more obviously with each passing week. I'd already drafted my resignation letter. It sat in a password-protected folder on my personal laptop at home, revised 17 times until the language struck the perfect balance between professional and final. 2 weeks' notice. A vague reference to pursuing other opportunities. Nothing that would invite questions or require explanations I couldn't give. The office around me had begun its evening transformation. The open floor plan that housed junior staff was emptying out, young analysts and associates, gathering their belongings with the relieved expressions of people escaping confinement. But the executive floor where I worked remained populated. Senior management didn't keep normal hours. Neither did their support staff. Through the glass wall of Gabriel's office, I could see him on a call, his profile sharp against the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. 32 years old and already commanding an empire that extended far beyond the quarterly reports I compiled. The Freire family had built their wealth through shipping and real estate, or so the official story went. Everyone who worked here long enough, learned not to ask too many questions about the other revenue streams that kept the company profitable even during economic downturns. He gestured as he spoke, his hand cutting through the air with precision. Even from a distance, I could read the tension in his shoulders, the slight forward lean that meant he was negotiating something that mattered. Gabriel never showed emotion in business dealings, but 3 years of observing him had taught me to recognize the micro-expressions that betrayed his true state. My phone buzzed against the desk. A calendar reminder. Doctor's appointment, 8 a.m. tomorrow. The first official prenatal visit. I'd scheduled it at a clinic 3 neighborhoods away from my apartment, and paid cash for the initial consultation, paranoid about insurance records that might somehow find their way back to Gabriel's attention. The nausea that had been my constant companion chose that moment to surge. I stood carefully, grabbing my water bottle as cover, and made my way to the private bathroom adjacent to my work area. One of the perks of being an executive secretary, your own facilities, away from the communal restrooms used by everyone else. I locked the door and leaned against the cool marble counter, breathing through my nose until the wave passed. My reflection in the mirror showed the truth I'd been hiding. Shadows under my eyes that makeup couldn't quite erase. A pallor that spoke of sleepless nights and morning sickness that lasted all day. The faint tightness around my mouth that came from constant vigilance. 25 years old. 3 years of impeccable service to a man who valued competence above all else. 1 night of spectacular judgment failure that would cost me everything I'd built. I splashed cold water on my wrists, an old trick my grandmother had taught me for nausea, and returned to my desk. The reports wouldn't finish themselves, and I needed Gabriel to have no complaints about my work quality. When I submitted my resignation next week, I wanted him to have no professional cause to question it. The elevator chimed, announcing a late arrival. Chuck Elder Castro emerged, Gabriel's head of security, and the man who knew everything that happened in and around this building. He was built like someone who'd spent years doing physical work, his dark suit tailored to accommodate shoulders that suggested he could break someone in half if required. "Ms. Machado," he said with a nod as he passed my desk, heading directly for Gabriel's office. I returned the greeting and watched as he knocked once before entering. Through the glass, I saw Gabriel end his call and turn his full attention to H.O. Calder. They spoke for several minutes, Gabriel's expression growing darker with whatever information was being delivered. Then Gabriel's eyes found me through the glass wall. The look lasted only a second before he returned his attention to Ho Calder. But it was enough. Something in that glance held a knowledge that made my stomach drop. Ho Calder left the office, offering me a small smile as he passed that felt almost sympathetic. I forced my attention back to my screen, trying to ignore the sudden racing of my pulse. It meant nothing. Gabriel looked at me dozens of times a day. This was no different. Except it was. My desk phone rang, the internal line. Gabriel's direct extension. "Helena, my office, please." No preamble, no explanation. Just the expectation that I would comply immediately, the way I always did. I saved my work and stood, smoothing down my black sheath dress, chosen specifically this morning because it still fit without clinging to the slight changes in my body. The walk to his office felt longer than usual, each step carrying me closer to something I couldn't name but instinctively feared. Gabriel stood by the windows when I entered, his back to me, hands in his pockets. The evening sun cast him in silhouette, making it impossible to read his expression. "Close the door," he said without turning. I did. The soft click of the latch impossibly loud in the suddenly quiet space. "Sit down, Helena." Not Ms. Machado. Helena. The use of my first name in this context sent warning signals through my nervous system. I took one of the leather chairs facing his desk, perching on the edge rather than settling back, ready to flee if necessary. Gabriel finally turned to face me. His features were composed, but I'd learned to read the small tells, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed once against his thigh before he stilled them. He was angry, but containing it with the iron control he brought to everything. "I'm going to ask you a question," he said, moving to lean against the front of his desk, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "And I want the truth." My throat felt tight. "Of course. Were you planning to tell me about the baby, or were you just going to disappear?" The world seemed to stop. The hum of the lights, the distant sound of traffic from the street below, my own heartbeat. All of it faded into static as his words registered. He knew. "I don't know what you're talking about," I managed, but the lie came out weak even to my own ears. Gabriel's expression didn't change. "H. Calder's job is to know everything that happens in this building and everything that could affect our operations. You've worked here for 3 years, Helena. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my executive secretary suddenly started avoiding coffee, spending excessive time in the bathroom, and scheduling medical appointments at clinics that don't take insurance?" The professional surveillance I'd always known existed in theory became horrifyingly concrete. "You've been having me followed." "I have everyone followed," he said without apology. "It's basic security protocol. What I want to know is why you thought hiding this from me was an acceptable option." The careful calm in his voice was somehow more intimidating than if he'd shouted. I stood, needing to not be sitting while he loomed over me. "Because it's none of your business." "None of my business?" His eyebrow rose fractionally. "You're carrying my child and planning to resign without telling me, and you think that's none of my business? One night doesn't give you ownership of my life or my decisions," I said, finding my voice even as my hands trembled. "What happened between us was a mistake. I'm handling the consequences. You don't need to be involved." "A mistake." He repeated the word as if tasting it. "Is that what you call it? What else would you call it?" The words came out sharper than intended, 3 weeks of fear and uncertainty finding an outlet. "You're my boss, Gabriel. We crossed a line that should never have been crossed. I'm not going to compound that error by complicating both our lives further." He studied me for a long moment. "You think disappearing protects anyone? My child growing up without knowing their father protects them? You struggling alone protects you?" "I won't be struggling. I have savings. I'll find another position." "Where?" he interrupted. "What company will hire a pregnant woman who just resigned from her previous position without explanation? What reference will I give that doesn't raise questions?" The practical reality of my situation, which I'd been avoiding thinking about too directly, crystallized with his words. "You'd sabotage my career?" "I'd tell the truth, that you were an exemplary employee who left for personal reasons I wasn't at liberty to discuss, which would make any hiring manager assume the worst." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that I'd been trying not to notice for 3 years. "Or you could stay, keep your position, your salary, your health insurance that would actually cover prenatal care and delivery. In exchange for what? In exchange for letting me be a father to my child." The simplicity of the statement somehow made it more complicated. "I never said you couldn't be. I just don't want to be another responsibility you manage like a quarterly report." Something flickered in his eyes. "Is that what you think you are to me? A responsibility to be managed?" "I don't know what I am to you, Gabriel. We've barely spoken about anything personal in 3 years. One night doesn't change that." "Then let's change it." He reached for my hand, his fingers warm against my cold ones. "Stay. Not just for the baby. Stay because you're good at your job and I don't want to replace you. Stay because whatever happened between us deserves more than you running away in the middle of the night." I wanted to pull away but couldn't quite make myself do it. "And when people figure it out? When the gossip starts? Let it start. I don't care what people think. Easy for you to say. You're Gabriel Frary. I'm just your secretary who made a catastrophically stupid decision. His jaw tightened. Don't call yourself stupid, and don't diminish what you are. You run this office more effectively than most executives run entire departments. You're the reason I can focus on the actual business instead of drowning in administrative chaos. That's not just anything. The compliment caught me off guard, and he must have seen it because his expression softened slightly. Stay, Helena. Let me handle the logistics, the gossip, all of it. You just focus on staying healthy and doing your job. Like it or not, I'm staying, I said, but it came out as more question than statement. Like it or not, he confirmed, because I know that child is mine, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in those words should have frightened me. Instead, for the first time in 3 weeks, I felt something like relief. The morning after Gabriel's revelation, I arrived at the office expecting everything to feel different. Instead, the fluorescent lights still hummed their monotonous note. The coffee machine in the break room still gurgled and hissed, and my desk still held the same stack of pending approvals that had been there when I left. What had changed was the weight of Gabriel's gaze every time I moved through his line of sight. I'd barely settled into my chair when Yara Baptista appeared, Gabriel's personal assistant, and the woman who handled matters too sensitive for standard channels. She was in her early 40s, elegant in the way of someone who'd learned to navigate powerful men without losing herself in the process. Mr. Freer asked me to give you this, she said, placing a sleek black folder on my desk. Her expression was professionally neutral, but something in her eyes suggested she knew more than she was saying. I opened the folder after she left. Inside, a new health insurance card with my name, upgraded to the premium tier that executives received. A business card for Dr. Teresa Vidal, one of the city's top obstetricians, with a note in Gabriel's precise handwriting. First appointment scheduled for tomorrow, 10 a.m., non-negotiable. Beneath that, a key card to his private parking garage, and a memo reassigning my parking spot from the public lot 3 blocks away to the secure underground facility directly beneath the building. I stared at the items, recognition dawning that this was how Gabriel operated, not through grand gestures or emotional declarations, but through systematic elimination of obstacles. He'd identified every practical concern I might have, and addressed them before I could voice objections. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The doctor visit you scheduled for this morning has been canceled and rescheduled with Dr. Vidal tomorrow. All fees already covered. 8 Chong CC, Elder. I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt the first whisper of what would become a familiar sensation over the coming months. The cage closing around me, lined with velvet, but locked nonetheless. Helena, do you have the Castellani contract revisions? Gabriel's voice came through my desk phone. I gathered the documents and entered his office. He was reviewing something on his tablet. Didn't look up immediately. When he did, his eyes went first to my face, then dropped briefly to my midsection before returning to meet my gaze. The changes are highlighted in red, I said, placing the folder on his desk. Legal already approved the modifications. Good. He paused, then added, Did you receive Yara's delivery? Yes. It wasn't necessary to cancel my other appointment. It was absolutely necessary. That clinic is adequate for routine care. You need someone who specializes in high-risk pregnancies. I'm not high risk. You're 25 years old, working 60-hour weeks, under considerable stress, and trying to hide a pregnancy from everyone around you. That qualifies as high risk. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if we were discussing quarterly projections rather than my body. Dr. Vidal is the best. You'll see her. I felt my jaw tighten. You can't just rearrange my life without asking. I can when the alternative is you receiving inadequate care because you're too stubborn to accept help. He set down his tablet, giving me his full attention. This isn't about control, Helena. It's about making sure you and the baby are healthy. Everything is about control with you. Something flickered in his expression. If I wanted control, you'd already be moved into my penthouse where I could monitor you 24 hours a day. Instead, I'm giving you upgraded insurance and a better doctor. Choose your battles carefully." The implication that this was the merciful option sent a chill through me. "You can't seriously be suggesting I move in with you." "Not yet. But we'll need to discuss living arrangements before you reach 20 weeks. Your apartment has stairs and no elevator. Not practical." He returned his attention to the contract as if the matter was settled. "That's all for now." I left his office, hands shaking with a combination of anger and something else I didn't want to name. Back at my desk, I pulled up my resignation letter, reading through it again. The words that had seemed so definitive last week now felt flimsy against the reality of Gabriel's determination. Gisela appeared at lunch, a welcome distraction. "Want to grab something from the cafe downstairs? I'm desperate to escape these walls for 20 minutes. "I can't. I have too much to finish before the Peterson meeting at 2. She tilted her head, studying me with the expression of someone who'd known me long enough to recognize when I was deflecting. "You've been different lately. Distant. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied, then softened it with honesty. "Just tired. I haven't been sleeping well." "Is it Frere? Is he pushing too hard?" Before I could answer, Gabriel himself emerged from his office, HOC elder at his side. They were deep in conversation, Gabriel's expression darker than I'd seen it in weeks. As they passed my desk, I caught fragments of their exchange. "Leal's been asking questions about the Castellani deal. Let him ask. He has no leverage. But if he connects the dots about the shipping routes..." They moved out of earshot, heading toward the private elevator that led to the executive conference room. But H.O. Calder glanced back at me as they walked, and in that look I read confirmation of something I'd been suspecting since yesterday. I'd become part of whatever calculus Gabriel was running in his head. Not just his secretary anymore, but a variable in larger equations I didn't fully understand. Gisela followed my gaze. Those two are always plotting something. I swear, sometimes I think Frere runs more than just a legitimate business empire. "That's not really our concern," I said quickly, aware that speculation about the Frere family operations was dangerous territory. "I suppose not." She checked her watch. "I should get back anyway. But Helena, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here. No judgment." After she left, I tried to focus on work, but found my mind circling back to the conversation I'd overheard. Guilherme Leal was one of Gabriel's primary business rivals, a man whose legitimate holdings masked operations that made the Frere family look positively ethical by comparison. If Leal was sniffing around the Castellani deal. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Hawonsi Elder. "Mr. Frere requests you join him in conference room A immediately." I saved my work and took the private elevator up. The executive conference room occupied half of the top floor, with windows on 3 sides offering panoramic city views. Gabriel stood at the far end, arms crossed, staring out at the skyline. Haakolder was positioned by the door, his presence somehow making the massive space feel smaller. "Close the door," Gabriel said, without turning. I did. The heavy door sealed with a soft click, and suddenly the ambient noise of the building disappeared entirely. Soundproof. Of course it was. "HOC Elder has information you need to hear," Gabriel said, finally facing me. "Tell her." HOC Elder's expression was apologetic but firm. "Guilherme Leal has been conducting surveillance on Mr. Frere's known associates. As of 3 days ago, that surveillance expanded to include you." The words took a moment to register. "Me? Why would he?" "Because you're close to Gabriel," HAOC Elder interrupted gently. "To someone like Leal, anyone in proximity to his rivals is a potential pressure point. He doesn't know about the pregnancy yet, but he knows you're important to Gabriel's operations." "I'm his secretary. That's not exactly classified information." "You're more than that," Gabriel said quietly. and Leal is smart enough to recognize it. The way I rely on you, trust you with sensitive information, he sees vulnerability there. I felt cold despite the climate-controlled room. What kind of surveillance? Monitoring your movements, your communications, your financial transactions. Standard intelligence gathering. HOC Elder pulled out his tablet, showing me a series of photographs. Me leaving my apartment building, entering the office, walking to the clinic I'd visited last week. The clinic. If he has people following me to medical appointments. I couldn't finish the sentence. He'll know about the pregnancy within days, if he doesn't already, Gabriel confirmed, which is why we need to get ahead of this. Get ahead of how? Gabriel exchanged a look with H.O. Calder that spoke of decisions already made. You're moving into my building effective immediately. There's a vacant unit on the floor below my penthouse, fully furnished. Xiao C. Elder's team will pack your apartment tonight. Absolutely not. Helena. No. I stood my ground even as my heart raced. You don't get to make that decision for me. I appreciate the warning, but I'm not moving just because some business rival is being nosy. This isn't nosiness, Gabriel said, his voice hardening. Guilherme Leal is dangerous. He's suspected in 3 disappearances of people who got in his way. I won't have you or our child become pressure points he can exploit. Then tell him the truth, make it public, remove the leverage. I'm not ready to do that yet. Why not? He was silent for a long moment. Because once it's public, everything changes. The board will have questions. Shareholders will have concerns. Every business opponent I have will view you and the baby as acceptable casualties in their wars with me, as opposed to now, where I'm just a secret casualty waiting to happen. His jaw tightened. You're not a casualty. You're under my protection. Protection I didn't ask for and don't want. Nevertheless, you have it. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the way it always was when he dropped the professional veneer. I'm not giving you a choice on this, Helena. You're moving tonight. You can fight me on the details, but not on the fact of it. I wanted to argue, to tell him exactly where he could put his high-handed decisions. But I looked at the photographs again, saw myself captured in moments I'd thought were private, and felt the first real curl of fear. The apartment, I said finally. I keep my own space. You don't have a key, and I don't have to report my comings and goings. Agreed, with one modification. Schickelder's team monitors the building security. If you leave, they need to know where you're going. That's not... It's the best offer you're going to get, Gabriel interrupted. And it's more freedom than I should be giving you under the circumstances. I looked at Hochschielder, who at least had the grace to appear sympathetic. He's right, Ms. Machado. If Leal knows about the pregnancy, your current apartment is indefensible. Mr. Freire's building has security measures that would take a military operation to breach. The practical part of my brain recognized the logic. The rest of me screamed against the trap closing tighter. Fine, I said. But this is temporary. Once Leal moves on to whatever his next obsession is. We'll revisit, Gabriel agreed, though something in his tone suggested he had no intention of ever letting me leave. That evening, I watched from Gabriel's penthouse as Hounkalder's team efficiently packed up my life into labeled boxes. Gabriel had insisted I not return to my apartment, citing security concerns, and I hadn't had the energy to fight him on it. Your apartment is 3 floors down, he said, handing me a keycard. 2100. It's similar layout to this one, but the second bedroom is set up as an office currently. Currently, I repeated. You mean until it becomes a nursery? That's still months away. He moved to the windows, hands in his pockets. Helena, I know this isn't what you wanted, but I need you to understand that I'm not doing this to control you. I'm doing this because the alternative is unacceptable. The alternative being? Anything happening to you or our child because I didn't take adequate precautions. He turned to face me. I've spent my entire adult life calculating risks and mitigating threats. This is no different. Except I'm not a business deal. I'm a person. I'm aware. His expression softened slightly. Which is why you have your own apartment instead of being installed in my guest room. Why you're keeping your position instead of being put on immediate leave. I'm trying to balance your autonomy with legitimate security concerns. I wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the fury that made me feel less helpless. But exhaustion was winning. 4 weeks of morning sickness, sleepless nights, and constant anxiety had depleted my reserves. I should go see my new prison, I said, heading for the door. Helena. I stopped but didn't turn around. It's not a prison. You can leave whenever you want. You just can't go back to being unprotected. The distinction felt meaningless, but I nodded and let myself out. Apartment 2100 was, as promised, similar to Gabriel's penthouse but smaller. The furniture was modern and expensive, the kitchen fully equipped, the bathroom larger than my bedroom had been at my old place. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. A gilded cage, I thought, but a cage nonetheless. My phone buzzed. A text from Gabriel. Holly Elder will deliver your belongings by 10 p.m. If you need anything before then, I'm upstairs. I sat on the pristine leather couch and finally let myself acknowledge the truth I'd been avoiding. I was in far deeper than a simple pregnancy. I'd become entangled in Gabriel Frere's world in a way that went beyond employer and employee, beyond even father and mother of a child. I'd become something he felt compelled to protect. And Gabriel Frere never let go of what he considered his. Dr. Teresa Vidal's office occupied the top floor of a medical building that probably cost more per square foot than most people's homes. The waiting room featured original artwork and furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine, rather than a place where people sat anxiously awaiting test results. I'd arrived alone, insisting to Gabriel that I didn't need an escort to a routine prenatal appointment. He'd agreed with visible reluctance, though I suspected Hoyle Calder's security team was somewhere nearby, maintaining their invisible perimeter. Ms. Machado? A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand. The doctor will see you now. Dr. Vidal was a woman in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair, pulled back in an elegant twist. She shook my hand with a firm grip and gestured to the examination table. I understand this is your third visit with us, and you're now approximately 12 weeks along. She reviewed something on her tablet. Mr. Frere was quite insistent that we provide comprehensive care. The casual mention of Gabriel's involvement made me tense. What exactly did he tell you? Simply that you're carrying his child, and that he wants the best possible care for both of you. She looked up, her expression kind but professional. Everything discussed here is confidential, Helena. May I call you Helena? I nodded, some of the tension easing. The examination was thorough. Blood tests, physical assessment, and finally the ultrasound. Dr. Vidal moved the wand across my abdomen, her eyes on the screen. Then she smiled. Would you like to see your baby? She turned the monitor toward me, and there it was. No longer a kidney bean, but an actual tiny human form with visible limbs. A flickering pulse at its center that made my breath catch. That's the heartbeat, Dr. Vidal said softly. Strong and steady. Based on measurements, I'd say you're about 12.5 weeks. That puts your due date around early to mid-April. April, 5.5 months away. The timeline suddenly felt real in a way it hadn't before. Everything looks healthy, the doctor continued. But I want you to reduce your stress levels. Mr. Frere mentioned you work extensive hours. We should discuss modifications to your schedule. My work is fine, I said quickly. I can manage. I'm sure you can, but the question is whether you should. She handed me printouts of the ultrasound images. High stress during pregnancy can lead to complications. I'd recommend no more than 45 hours per week, with regular breaks. I thought of Gabriel's reaction if I tried to reduce my hours. I'll consider it. Back at the office, I found Gabriel in his usual position by the windows, phone pressed to his ear. He glanced at me as I entered, then ended his call abruptly. How was Dr. Vidal? Thorough. I placed the ultrasound images on his desk. She said everything looks healthy. Due date is mid-April now. She revised it based on current measurements. He picked up one of the images, studying it with an intensity that seemed disproportionate to the grainy black and white form. April, he repeated. 5.5 months. She also said I should reduce my work hours, 45 per week maximum. His eyes lifted to mine. Agreed. I wasn't asking permission. I know. I was agreeing with the doctor's recommendation. He set down the image. In fact, I've already instructed Yara to redistribute some of your responsibilities to the administrative pool. The familiar frustration flared. Without consulting me first, would you have agreed if I'd asked? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. He moved around the desk, closing the distance between us. You won't prioritize your health over your work. Someone has to. I can make my own decisions about what I can handle. Can you? His voice was quiet but challenging. Because from where I stand, you've been running yourself into the ground for 6 weeks, trying to prove you can do everything alone. That stubbornness might work when it's just you, but it's not anymore. The words hit harder than they should have. I looked away, focusing on the city beyond the windows, rather than his too perceptive gaze. Helena. He waited until I met his eyes again. I know you're angry about how this happened, how I found out, the security, the apartment, all of it. But my priority is keeping you and the baby safe and healthy. If that makes me controlling, I can live with that. Easy to say when you're the one doing the controlling. Is it really about control? Or is it about the fact that you've been independent for so long that accepting help feels like weakness? The accuracy of his observation made me want to throw something. Instead, I crossed my arms. I don't need psychoanalysis from my boss. I'm not just your boss anymore. Then what are you? The question hung between us. Gabriel was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I don't know, he finally said. That's what we need to figure out. He gestured to the leather chairs by his desk. I sat, and he took the one across from me rather than retreating behind his desk. The informality of the arrangement felt deliberate. Tell me about the first time we met, he said. The unexpected question threw me. What does that have to do with anything? Humor me. I thought back to 3 years ago, my first day as his executive secretary. You were in the middle of acquisitions negotiations. You barely looked at me, just told me what you needed done and expected me to figure out how to do it. You did, faster and more efficiently than any of the 3 secretaries I'd had before you. A slight smile touched his lips. I remember thinking you were either brilliant or foolhardy to reorganize my entire filing system within the first week. It was a mess. Color coding by urgency made more sense than alphabetical. It did. Just like your suggestion to consolidate the morning briefings into a single digital report instead of 4 separate documents. He leaned forward. You've been making my professional life more effective from day one. Why do you think I trust you with information most executives don't see? Because I'm good at my job. Because you're essential to how I operate. You anticipate what I need before I ask for it. You filter out the noise so I can focus on what matters. You've made yourself indispensable, Helena. The compliment made me uncomfortable in its sincerity. If this is supposed to make me feel better about you rearranging my life, it's supposed to make you understand that what happened between us didn't come from nowhere. His voice dropped lower. I've been aware of you for 3 years. Not just as an employee, but as a woman who challenges me in ways no one else does. The night we spent together wasn't a random mistake. It was something I'd been thinking about far longer than I should have. My breath caught. You never showed any sign because you worked for me, because I knew the moment I acted on it, everything would change. He held my gaze. But it did change. And now we're here, and I'm trying to figure out how to be what you need while being what our child needs. What I need is autonomy, the freedom to make my own choices. Even when those choices put you at risk. They're still my choices to make. He considered this. What if we make an agreement? Clear boundaries for what's negotiable and what isn't. I hadn't expected that. You're offering to negotiate? Within reason. I won't compromise on your safety or the baby's health, but other aspects we can discuss. It was more than I'd expected from a man who was used to absolute authority. I want to keep working. Full duties, not some reduced role that makes me feel useless. 45 hours maximum, and you work from home 1 day a week. 2 days in office, 3 remote, I countered. 4 days in office, 1 remote, and you take a full hour for lunch instead of eating at your desk. I wanted to argue, but the compromise was better than I'd hoped for. Fine, and I keep my apartment. No timeline on moving into yours. His jaw tightened. For now. But we revisit that conversation at 20 weeks when stairs become more difficult. Agreed. And you don't make medical decisions without consulting me first. As long as you actually attend the appointments and follow Dr. Vidal's recommendations. I'm not a child, Gabriel. I know exactly what you are. The heat in his voice caught me off guard. You're stubborn, brilliant, infuriating, and carrying my child, which makes you the most important person in my life right now, whether you want that responsibility or not. The declaration left me speechless. Gabriel stood, moving back to the windows as if needing distance from his own words. I have a meeting with the Castellani representatives in an hour, he said, his tone shifting back to business. I need you to prepare the updated contracts and sit in to take notes. The abrupt return to professional matters was almost a relief. Of course. I started to leave, but his voice stopped me at the door. Helena, that night. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I don't regret it. I know I should, given the complications it's caused, but I don't. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply nodded and left. The Castellani meeting lasted 3 hours, a tedious negotiation over shipping routes and import fees that I documented with mechanical precision. But throughout it all, I was hyper-aware of Gabriel across the conference table, the way he commanded the room without raising his voice, the subtle tells when he was about to make a counteroffer, the brief glances he sent my direction to ensure I was capturing specific details. We'd fallen into these patterns over 3 years, a professional synchronicity that required no discussion. But now that synchronicity felt charged with meaning, beyond mere efficiency. When the meeting finally ended, and the Castellani representatives departed, Gabriel loosened his tie with visible relief. They're going to agree to the revised terms, he said, probably by Friday. How can you be sure? Because they need our infrastructure more than we need their products. They're posturing to save face, but the math only works one way. He began gathering documents. Good notes, especially catching the discrepancy in their tonnage calculations. They were hoping you wouldn't notice the numbers didn't match across the different documents. I wasn't looking that closely. You were. He met my eyes. See? Essential. The word felt weighted with more than professional appreciation. Back at my desk, I pulled up my personal email and found a message from Gisela. Wine bar after work? You look like you need to decompress. I wanted to say yes, to spend an evening being normal instead of navigating the complicated reality my life had become. But wine was off the table, and Gisela was too perceptive not to notice if I ordered sparkling water while she drank. I was typing a polite decline when my phone buzzed with a text from Ha Aoin Si, elder. Update on Leal situation. He's made contact with former employee Maria Torres, attempting to gather information about Mr. Frere's personal life. Be advised. Maria Torres had left the company 6 months ago under circumstances that were never fully explained. She'd been in accounting, had access to records that might reveal patterns in Gabriel's operations. I forwarded the message to Gabriel and watched through his office window as he read it. His expression darkened immediately. He made a phone call, his free hand clenched into a fist at his side. When he emerged 5 minutes later, his face was carefully blank again. I need to handle something. I'll be out of the office for the rest of the day. If anything urgent comes up, call Jaime C. Elder. Is everything all right? It will be. He paused by my desk. Stay in the building until I get back. Don't leave without security. Gabriel, please, Helena. Just this once, don't fight me on it. The genuine concern in his voice made me nod. He left, Shishu Elder falling into step beside him, and I was alone with my thoughts and the uncomfortable awareness that the dangers Gabriel was protecting me from were very real. I worked through the evening, the office gradually emptying around me. By 8 p.m., I was one of 3 people left on the floor. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Gabriel. Going to be later than expected. Dimitri is parked in the garage. He'll take you home when you're ready. Home. He meant his building, the apartment 3 floors below his penthouse. The place that was supposed to be temporary, but felt increasingly permanent with each passing day. I packed up my belongings and took the elevator down to the parking garage. Dimitri, one of HOC Elder's team, stood beside a black sedan. He opened the door without a word, and I slid into the back seat. The drive to Gabriel's building took 12 minutes. Dimitri escorted me to the elevator, punched in the security code, and waited until the doors closed before returning to the car. In apartment 2100, I kicked off my heels and moved to the windows. The city spread below, thousands of lights in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Gabriel was handling whatever threat Guilherme Leal represented, making decisions, taking actions I would never fully know about. My phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number. You're making a mistake trusting Gabriel Freire. Ask him what really happened to Maria Torres. I stared at the message, my heart racing, then deleted it without responding. But sleep didn't come easy that night. At 16 weeks, the pregnancy could no longer be hidden. My body had transformed in ways that no amount of strategic clothing could disguise. The small bump had become pronounced, my breasts had swelled 2 cup sizes, and my face had taken on that fullness everyone politely called glowing. You need to tell people, Gisela said one morning, cornering me in the break room. Helena, I've known you for 3 years. I'm not blind. You're pregnant. I'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. Still, hearing it stated so directly made my stomach clench. How long have you known? About a month, but I was waiting for you to tell me yourself. She touched my arm gently. Is everything okay? The father? Is he in the picture? It's complicated. It always is. She studied my face with concern. But you're safe? You're being taken care of? Yes. More than taken care of, actually. I thought of Gabriel's constant surveillance, the upgraded apartment, the premium medical care. It's just not public yet. Because of work? Because of everything. Before she could press further, my phone buzzed. A text from Gabriel. My office. Now. I excused myself and found Gabriel standing by his windows, Chalkalder beside him. Both men turned as I entered, their expressions grim. Close the door, Gabriel said. I did, my pulse quickening. What's happened? Guilherme Leal has leaked information to a business journalist, HOC Elder said without preamble. The story is scheduled to run tomorrow morning. It details your pregnancy and implies impropriety in your employment. The floor seemed to tilt. How did he? Maria Torres provided him with access to old financial records. He's constructed a narrative that makes it appear I hired you, knowing we had a personal relationship, that the pregnancy is the result of an ongoing affair. Gabriel's voice was controlled, but I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. None of it is true, but it's plausible enough to cause problems. What kind of problems? Board inquiries, shareholder concerns, potential regulatory investigations. He turned to face me fully. We need to get ahead of this. How? By making our own announcement, tonight, before Leal's story breaks. He pulled out his phone, showing me a prepared statement. This confirms our relationship in the pregnancy. It presents the facts on our terms. I read the carefully worded paragraphs. Professional, warm, revealing nothing about the complicated truth. It makes it sound like we've been dating for months. We don't need to provide a detailed timeline. The relevant facts are, you're pregnant, I'm the father, we're committed to co-parenting. He paused. Unless you want to say something different. What do you want to say? His eyes held mine. I want to tell the truth, that what started as a single night became something neither of us expected. That you're important to me beyond just being the mother of my child. That I'm not ashamed of any of this. The raw honesty in his voice made my breath catch. Gabriel. But I'll follow your lead, he continued. This affects you more than it affects me. What do you want people to know? I thought about the past 12 weeks. The way he'd inserted himself into every aspect of my life, not with cruelty, but with relentless protectiveness. The way I'd fought him at every turn, yet found myself softening despite my better judgment. Tell them we're figuring it out, I said finally. That this wasn't planned, but we're committed to making it work. For our child and for ourselves. Something like relief crossed his features. I can work with that. Cho Si Elder made a call, and within minutes, Gabriel's communications team was revising the statement. An hour later, it went live across all major platforms. My phone immediately exploded with notifications. Messages from colleagues, from numbers I didn't recognize, from the few friends I'd maintained contact with over the years. I turned it off and stared at the city beyond Gabriel's windows. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait to see how the world responds. He moved to stand beside me. Helena, I know this isn't how you wanted things to go, but for what it's worth, I'm not sorry everyone knows. I'm tired of pretending you're just my secretary. What am I then? He was quiet for a long moment. Someone I care about more than I've cared about anyone in a very long time. Someone I'm determined to protect, even when you don't think you need protecting. Someone who makes me want to be better than I've been. The words settled over me, sincere and terrifying in equal measure. I don't know how to do this, Gabriel. Any of this. Neither do I, but we'll figure it out together. His hand found mine, warm and solid. Trust me on that, at least. The media response was swift and predictably chaotic. By morning, our names were trending. Headlines ranged from supportive to sensational, and think pieces debated everything from workplace ethics to modern relationships. Stop reading those, Gabriel said the next day, finding me scrolling through articles on my tablet. He'd appeared at my apartment door at 8 a.m., with breakfast and the morning papers. They don't matter. They feel like they matter. They don't. What matters is that Leal's leverage is gone. The story he was planning to leak is now just confirmation of what we already announced. He set coffee, decaf, in front of me. We control the narrative now. Over the next 2 weeks, the initial frenzy died down. Colleagues who'd been distant became cautiously friendly. Gisela took me to lunch and extracted a heavily edited version of the truth, which she accepted with characteristic grace. The board issued a statement supporting Gabriel's personal choices while reaffirming confidence in his leadership. And slowly, Impossibly, our new reality began to feel almost normal. At 18 weeks, Gabriel called me into his office with an announcement. I'm making some organizational changes. Yara will take on more administrative oversight. You're transitioning to a new role. I stiffened, expecting demotion disguised as consideration for my condition. What role? Director of Strategic Operations. He handed me a detailed job description. You've been doing this work informally for over a year. Time to make it official. I scanned the document, shocked by how accurately it reflected what I actually did. People will say you're giving me special treatment. People will say all kinds of things. The question is whether you care more about their opinions than about doing work you're qualified for. He met my gaze steadily. This isn't charity, Helena. You've earned this position, and I'm interviewing 3 candidates to replace you as executive secretary to prove it's not about keeping you close. The thoughtfulness of it, the way he'd anticipated my objections, left me momentarily speechless. Thank you. You don't need to thank me for recognizing your value. He moved closer. Though I wouldn't object to you showing appropriate appreciation later. The heat in his voice sent a shiver through me. Despite months of forced proximity, we'd maintained careful physical boundaries. But lately, those boundaries had been eroding. Gabriel, I know. We're taking things slowly. I'm trying to respect that. His hand cupped my face gently. But you should know, I'm not a patient man by nature. The fact that I've waited this long is testament to how much you matter to me. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He sighed, stepping back. We'll continue this conversation later. Think about the position. I need an answer by Monday. That weekend, Gabriel insisted on taking me out of the city. You need a break from the office politics and media scrutiny, he said, brushing aside my protests. Doctor's orders. Dr. Vidal didn't say anything about leaving the city. She said to reduce stress. This is stress reduction. We drove to a property he owned in the Catskills, a modern glass and stone house built into a hillside, surrounded by winter-bare trees and stunning views. The same place we'd fled to during the Leal crisis, but this time the atmosphere was entirely different. No security teams, no immediate threats, just us and the quiet of the mountains. This place is beautiful, I said, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the valley. It's peaceful. That's why I bought it. He came to stand beside me, close but not touching. I needed somewhere away from everything, somewhere that felt separate from all the complications. And you brought me here. I brought you here because you're not a complication, Helena. You're the only uncomplicated thing in my life. He turned to face me. With you, I don't have to calculate every word, every action. I can just be. The vulnerability in his admission made my heart ache. I don't think anyone's ever said something like that to me before. Then they were fools. That night, after dinner and quiet conversation by the fire, Gabriel walked me to the guest room where I'd stayed during our previous visit. But this time, when he said goodnight, his hand lingered on my face. Helena, he said softly, I need you to know, whatever happens between us, however this evolves, I'm committed to you and our child. That's not negotiable. I know. Do you? His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. Because sometimes I think you're still waiting for me to change my mind, to decide this is too complicated and walk away. The thought has crossed my mind. It shouldn't. I don't walk away from what's mine. He caught the objection forming on my lips and smiled slightly. I know. You're not a possession. But you are mine in every way that matters. And I'm yours, if you want me. The question hung in the air between us. Did I want him? This complicated, controlling, surprisingly tender man who'd rearranged my entire life. I'm scared, I admitted, of how much I'm starting to want this. Want you. Good. I've been terrified for weeks. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his lips met mine in a kiss that started gentle, but deepened quickly, months of restraint finally breaking. When we finally parted, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay with me tonight, not just in the guest room. With me. Gabriel? Just to sleep. I just want to hold you. His voice dropped lower. Please. I should have said no. Should have maintained the boundaries that had kept this situation manageable. Instead, I nodded. His room was masculine and comfortable, dominated by a massive bed facing more floor-to-ceiling windows. He lent me a t-shirt to sleep in, and when we finally lay down, he pulled me against him, my back to his chest, his arm draped protectively over my growing belly. This okay? He murmured against my hair. Yeah, this is okay. I felt him relax, his breathing gradually evening out, and for the first time in months, I slept deeply, dreamlessly, safe in the arms of a man I was slowly, terrifyingly falling in love with. At 24 weeks, the baby's movements had become impossible to ignore. Strong kicks and rolls that Gabriel felt with wonder every time his hand rested on my stomach, which was increasingly often. We'd settled into a routine that felt almost domestic. I'd officially started my new position as Director of Strategic Operations, proving to skeptics that I'd earned the role through competence rather than personal connections. Gabriel and I had dinner together most evenings, sometimes in his penthouse, sometimes in mine, the boundaries between our spaces growing more fluid by the week. We hadn't slept together again, not in the way that mattered. But we'd shared a bed several more times, his arms around me becoming as familiar as breathing. The restraint was starting to fray, evident in the heated looks we exchanged, the lingering touches, the kisses that grew longer and deeper. We need to talk about what happens after the baby arrives, Gabriel said one evening over dinner in his apartment. February snow fell steadily outside the windows, blanketing the city in white. What do you mean? I mean living arrangements, childcare, how we navigate having a newborn while both maintaining our careers. He set down his fork. I want us all under one roof, Helena. This having 2 apartments in the same building, it was practical when we were figuring things out. But now what? Now I hate going to sleep without you. I hate waking up and having to wait until you come upstairs for breakfast. I hate the pretense that we're not building a life together. My breath caught. Gabriel, I love you. He said it simply, directly. I have for months, maybe longer if I'm honest with myself. And I know you feel something for me too, even if you're not ready to name it yet. He wasn't wrong. Somewhere between his high-handed protectiveness and unexpected tenderness, I'd fallen completely. I do feel something, I admitted. But moving in together, that's a big step. We're having a baby together. That's already the biggest step. He moved around the table, kneeling beside my chair so we were eye level. I'm not asking you to give up your independence or your apartment. Keep it as office space, as a retreat when you need alone time. But live with me. Here. Let me wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep holding you every night. The image he painted was dangerously appealing. What if it doesn't work? What if we realize we drive each other crazy? Then we'll figure it out. But I'd rather fail trying than succeed at maintaining safe distance. His hand covered mine. Take a chance on us, Helena. Please. I looked at this man who'd fought me at every turn, who'd protected me against my will, who'd slowly, inevitably become essential to my happiness. Okay. Relief flooded his features. Okay, I'll move in. But I'm keeping my apartment as office space, and when you're being impossibly controlling, I reserve the right to retreat there. Deal. He stood, pulling me up with him, and kissed me thoroughly. When? After the baby arrives. I want to be settled in one place before that chaos begins. Acceptable. His hands cradled my face. Have I mentioned lately that you're the most remarkable woman I've ever known? You might have implied it once or twice. Well, it bears repeating. That night, I finally gave in to the tension that had been building for months. No more restraint, no more boundaries. Just us, finally admitting what we both wanted. The next morning, I woke in Gabriel's arms in his bed. Our bed now, I supposed, and felt something settle into place. This complicated, unconventional relationship had somehow become the most real thing in my life. "Good morning," he murmured, his hand already moving to my belly where the baby was doing morning gymnastics. "Morning." I turned to face him. "No regrets?" "About last night? Not even remotely." He kissed me softly. "About any of this?" "Never." The peace lasted 3 more weeks. At 27 weeks, H.O. Coulter appeared at the office with news that made Gabriel's expression go dangerously blank. Guilherme Leal had made bail. "How?" I demanded, fear flooding through me. "I thought he was being held without bail." His legal team found a technicality. Judge granted bail on condition he surrender his passport and wear a monitor. Charo C. Elder's jaw tightened. He made his first call to a known associate. "Meaning he's planning something," Gabriel finished. He turned to me. "You're going home. Now." "Gabriel." "This isn't negotiable, Helena." He was already gathering his jacket. "HOC Elder's team is securing the building, but I want you somewhere with controlled access until we understand Leal's intentions." We rode the elevator to the 23rd floor in tense silence. Once in the penthouse, Gabriel immediately got on the phone with his security team, while I tried to process the sudden shift from peaceful normalcy to crisis mode. "I'll work from here today," Gabriel announced after ending a series of calls. "HOC Elder is coordinating a response. In the meantime, we stay put." Hours crawled by. Gabriel maintained the appearance of business as usual, taking calls and reviewing documents, but I noticed how his eyes kept tracking to me, ensuring I remained in sight. At 4 p.m., HOC Elder called with an update. I only heard Gabriel's side, but his expression told me everything. "Leal violated bail terms within 6 hours of release," Gabriel said after ending the call. He cut off his monitor and disappeared. "Authorities have issued a warrant." So he's running. Or planning something desperate. Gabriel moved to the windows, jaw tight. "HOC Elder thinks he might try to contact you directly. Use you as leverage one final time." "I'm not afraid of him." "You should be." He turned to face me. "Guilherme Leal has nothing left to lose. That makes him more dangerous than he's ever been." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Tell Frere I want to talk. Just him and me. No lawyers, no security. 1 hour at the original meeting place. If he doesn't show, I start making calls to people who'd love to know about his less legitimate business partners." GL. I showed the message to Gabriel, whose expression went dangerously blank. "He's bluffing," I said. "You've already neutralized most of his evidence." "Most of it. But he's right that there are still details that could damage the business." Gabriel made a call to HOC Elder. "Set it up. I'll meet him." "Gabriel, no." He held up a hand. "Bring the full team, but keep them outside perimeter. I go in alone as requested." "This is obviously a trap," I protested after he ended the call. "It's a desperate man making one final play." He moved to where I stood. "I've been in worse situations, Helena. I'll handle this. And if something goes wrong?" His hands were gentle on my shoulders. "Nothing will go wrong. Leal thinks he's orchestrating this meeting. He has no idea I've been 3 steps ahead of him for months." "You're not invincible," No, but I'm very good at what I do. His hand moved to my stomach, where our baby rolled against his palm, and I have every reason to come back safely. The next 2 hours were torture. I watched from the penthouse as Gabriel's SUV pulled out, Schukelder's convoy following at a distance. My phone showed the tracking app, a dot representing Gabriel moving toward the waterfront. At 6:47 p.m., HOC Elder called. Ms. Machado, situation is under control. Leal attempted to assault Mr. Frere during their meeting. He's been apprehended and is in custody. Mr. Frere is unharmed and on his way back. I nearly collapsed with relief. Gabriel arrived 20 minutes later, looking rumpled but intact. A small cut above his eyebrow was the only visible sign of trouble. "You're hurt," I said, reaching for his face. "Superficial." Leal got one punch in before Hakwongselder's team intervened. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. "It's over, Helena. Really over this time." Leal violated bail, assaulted me, attempted extortion. He won't be a threat for a very long time. The tension I'd been carrying released all at once. I sagged against him, his arms coming around me automatically. "I was terrified," I admitted into his shirt. "I know. I'm sorry I had to put you through that." His hand stroked my back. "But I needed to end this. For us. For our child. For the future we're building." That night, lying in bed with his hand on my belly and our baby moving beneath his palm, Gabriel spoke the words I'd been waiting to hear. "I love you, Helena. Not because you're carrying my child, though that's part of it, but because you challenge me, match me, make me want to be better. You've changed everything." "I love you too," I said, finally admitting the truth I'd been hiding from myself. "Even when you're impossible," he laughed softly. "I'm working on that. Work harder." "Yes, ma'am." At 32 weeks, pregnancy had transformed from an abstract concept into a physical reality that dominated every aspect of my existence. My belly had grown to the point where I could no longer see my feet. Sleep came in fragmented intervals interrupted by bathroom trips and the baby's acrobatic performances, and despite Dr. Vidal's assurances that everything was progressing normally, the approaching due date filled me with equal parts anticipation and terror. "You're nesting," Gisela observed one afternoon, finding me reorganizing files in my office for the 3rd time that week. My sister did the same thing before her kids were born. Couldn't stop cleaning and organizing everything. "I just want to have everything in order before I go on leave," I said, though she wasn't wrong. The compulsion to prepare, to control what little I could control, had become overwhelming. "When's your last day?" 2 weeks. April 10th. The baby's due April 15th, but Dr. Vidal said first babies often come late. I touched my belly where a foot pressed insistently against my ribs, though this one seems impatient. "And after? Are you coming back?" It was a question I'd been avoiding. Gabriel and I had discussed it extensively. He'd made it clear I could take as much time as I needed, that my position would be waiting whenever I was ready to return. But the reality of balancing motherhood with a demanding career felt impossibly complex. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Ask me again in 6 months." That evening, Gabriel found me in the nursery we'd set up in what had been his home office. I'd officially moved into the penthouse 2 weeks ago, my apartment on the 20th floor now serving as the office space we'd agreed upon. The transition had been surprisingly easy. Most of my belongings had already migrated upward over the months of shared dinners and overnight stays. "You've rearranged the stuffed animals again," he observed, leaning against the doorframe. The elephant looked better by the window. The elephant looked fine where it was. He moved behind me, his arms encircling my waist, or what remained of it, his hands resting on my belly. "You're anxious." "I'm terrified," I corrected. "In less than 3 weeks, we're going to be responsible for an actual human being. What if we're terrible at it?" Then we'll figure it out together, like we've figured out everything else. His lips found the sensitive spot below my ear. You're going to be an amazing mother, Helena. How can you be so sure? Because I've watched you for 3 years. You're organized, competent, fiercely protective of what matters to you. And this baby already matters more than anything. He turned me to face him. We're going to make mistakes. Probably a lot of them, but we'll make them together. The certainty in his voice steadied something inside me. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just finally recognizing it. I laughed despite myself. And there's the arrogance I know so well. Confidence, not arrogance. He kissed me softly. Come to bed. You need rest. I need to finish organizing the nursery is perfect. The entire apartment is perfect. You are perfect. He guided me toward our bedroom with gentle insistence. And you need to sleep while you still can. He was right, of course. Once in bed, with his solid warmth behind me and his hand making slow circles on my belly, exhaustion finally overcame anxiety. 2 weeks later, on April 10th, my planned last day before maternity leave, everything changed. I was in a meeting with the acquisitions team when the first contraction hit. Not the Braxton Hicks contractions I'd been experiencing for weeks, but something deeper, more insistent. I made it through the meeting by gripping the edge of the conference table and focusing on my breathing. Helena, are you all right? Asked James, one of the analysts. You look pale. Fine, just tired. Another contraction, stronger this time. I checked my watch. 8 minutes since the last one. Actually, I think I need to leave early. I made it back to my office and called Gabriel, who was in a client meeting downtown. Don't panic, but I think I'm in labor. How far apart are the contractions? About 7 minutes now. I'm on my way. Call Dr. Vidal and tell her we're coming in. And Helena? His voice softened. Breathe. You've got this. Dr. Vidal examined me in her office and confirmed what I already suspected. You're 3 centimeters dilated and the contractions are regular. This is early labor. It could still be several hours before active labor begins. She smiled kindly. Why don't you go home, rest if you can, and come to the hospital when contractions are 5 minutes apart, or your water breaks. Home now meant Gabriel's penthouse. We rode the elevator up in tense silence, Gabriel's hand never leaving the small of my back. Shaoxi Elder had already been notified and had alerted the security team at the hospital where we'd be delivering. This is really happening, I said, as another contraction gripped me. This is really happening, Gabriel confirmed, guiding me to the couch. What do you need? I don't know. The books all say different things about early labor. Walk around, rest, eat light foods, don't eat. I trailed off as another contraction built. I think I just need you here. I'm not going anywhere. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of increasing intensity. Contractions grew stronger and closer together. Gabriel timed them with focused precision, helped me through breathing exercises, and never once left my side. By 10 p.m., they were 5 minutes apart. Time to go, he said, already calling for the car. The hospital's private maternity ward was everything Gabriel's resources could provide. A spacious room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical facility, with equipment discreetly hidden behind elegant cabinetry. Dr. Vidal arrived shortly after we did, examining me with practiced efficiency. 7 centimeters, she announced. You're doing beautifully. Probably another few hours. Those few hours were the longest of my life. Gabriel never left, holding my hand through every contraction, wiping my forehead with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement when I was certain I couldn't do this anymore. I can't, I gasped as another wave of pain crashed over me. Gabriel, I can't. Yes, you can. His voice was steady, anchoring me. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. At 3:47 a.m. on April 11th, after 22 hours of labor, Hugo Gabriel Freire entered the world with a lusty cry that announced his displeasure at the entire experience. "He's perfect," Dr. Vidal said, placing the tiny, angry bundle on my chest. "Congratulations." I stared down at the wrinkled, red-faced creature who was somehow ours, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it physically hurt. "We made this," I whispered. "We did." Gabriel's voice was thick with emotion I'd never heard from him before. His finger traced Hugo's tiny hand, which immediately grasped it with surprising strength. "Hello, son. I'm your father." The wonder in his voice, the tears he didn't bother hiding, the way he looked at both of us like we'd hung the moon. In that moment, every complicated step that had brought us here felt worth it. After the medical team completed their assessments and we'd been moved to a recovery room, Gabriel sat carefully on the edge of my bed, Hugo cradled in his arms with surprising natural ease. "He has your nose," he observed. "He has your stubborn chin. Poor kid." He looked up at me, his expression serious. "Thank you, Helena. For him, for us, for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to." "Thank you for not giving me a choice," I said, only half joking. "If you'd asked nicely in the beginning, I probably would have run. I know. That's why I didn't ask." He transferred Hugo back to my arms. "Get some rest. I'll be here when you wake up." "You don't have to stay. You should go home, shower, get actual sleep." "Helena." He cut me off gently. "I'm not leaving. Not tonight. Not ever. Get used to it." I wanted to argue, but exhaustion was winning. With our son against my chest and Gabriel's hand holding mine, I finally let sleep claim me. 3 years later, April Hugo's 3rd birthday party was in full swing in the backyard of the house we'd bought 18 months ago. Not the penthouse. That had been perfect for 2 people building a life together, but a growing family needed space. We'd found a place with a yard, good schools nearby, and enough distance from the city to feel like breathing room. I watched from the patio as Gabriel taught Hugo to kick a soccer ball, both of them laughing when Hugo's enthusiastic kick sent the ball careening into the flower beds. My hand rested on my belly, where our second child, a girl this time, due in 2 months, performed her own acrobatic routine. "They're good together," Gisela observed, appearing beside me with a glass of lemonade. "Gabriel's a natural father." "He is," I agreed, still sometimes surprised by how easily he'd adapted to fatherhood. The same intensity he brought to business, he channeled into being present for Hugo. Bedtime stories, weekend adventures, patient explanations of how things worked. He approached parenting with the same commitment he brought to everything that mattered to him. "And you? No regrets about the unconventional beginning?" I thought about the past 3.5 years, the fear and resistance of those early months, the gradual surrender to something I hadn't known I wanted, the way love had grown in the spaces between control and compromise. "Not a single one," I said honestly. Hugo spotted me and abandoned the soccer ball, running over with arms outstretched. "Mommy, did you see me kick?" "I did. That was impressive." I caught him as he crashed into my legs, lifting him as much as my pregnant belly would allow. Gabriel followed, scooping Hugo up when he saw me struggling. "Careful with Mommy. Your sister needs space, too." "When's she coming?" Hugo asked for the 100th time. "About 2 more months," I said. "That's forever. It'll go faster than you think, buddy," Gabriel said, setting him down. "Why don't you go show Aunt Gisela your new dinosaur?" Hugo took off at full speed, and Gabriel turned to me, his hand automatically going to my belly where the baby kicked against his palm. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. Huge. Ready to meet this little one, but also dreading going through labor again. You'll be amazing, just like last time." He kissed me softly, though maybe this one will come a bit faster than 22 hours. "From your lips to God's ears." That evening, after the party had wound down and Hugo was finally asleep in his bed cluttered with new birthday toys, Gabriel and I sat on the back patio watching the sunset. "Do you ever think about how we started?" I asked. "How angry I was when you wouldn't let me leave." "I think about it all the time." He pulled me closer against his side. "I think about how I had no idea how to handle what I was feeling, so I defaulted to control because that's what I knew. It worked out. It did, but I've learned better ways since then." He was quiet for a moment. "Helena, I need to tell you something." The serious tone made me turn to look at him. "What?" From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. My breath caught. "Before you panic, this isn't what you think." "Not exactly." He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band. "I'm not asking you to marry me." "You're not?" "I'm asking you to forgive me." His voice was steady, but his eyes held vulnerability I rarely saw. "For how I handled everything at the beginning. For taking away your choices when I should have trusted you to make them. For protecting you in ways that felt more like prison than care. Gabriel, let me finish." He took the ring from the box. "This ring represents a promise. Not that I own you or possess you, but that I choose you. Every day. And that you're free to choose me back, or not. No cages, no control. Just love if you want it." Tears were streaming down my face now. "You're really not asking me to marry you?" "Not unless you want me to." A slight smile touched his lips. "I thought about doing this the traditional way, down on one knee, big romantic gesture. But that's not us. We've never been traditional." He was right about that. Nothing about our relationship had followed conventional paths. "I don't need a wedding to know you're committed to me," I said. "You've shown me that every day for 3 years. But I want one anyway." I laughed through my tears. "I want to stand up in front of everyone and choose you publicly. I want Hugo to see that his parents chose each other, even though we started wrong. I want our daughter to know that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real." Hope flared in his eyes. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes. Ask me properly." He laughed, the sound rich with relief and joy. Then, carefully maneuvering around my pregnant belly, he knelt on one knee on our patio, holding up the ring. "Helena Machado, mother of my children, love of my life, woman who challenges me every single day. Will you marry me?" "Yes," I said simply. "Yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, then stood and pulled me into his arms, kissing me thoroughly, while the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. Hugo's voice came from the doorway. "Why is Daddy kissing Mommy?" Gabriel broke the kiss, but didn't let me go. "Because Mommy just said she'll marry me." "What's marry mean?" "It means Mommy and I are going to have a special party where we promise to love each other forever," I explained. "Can I come to the party?" "You're going to be the most important guest," Gabriel assured him. Hugo considered this, then shrugged with the easy acceptance of a 3-year-old. "Okay. Can I have ice cream now?" We laughed, and Gabriel released me to take Hugo inside for his promised treat. I stayed on the patio a moment longer, looking at the ring on my finger, feeling the baby moving inside me, hearing my son's laughter and my fiancé's deeper voice from inside our home. This life we'd built from an impossible beginning. This family that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Like it or not, Gabriel had told me that first day. "You're staying." He'd been right. But somewhere along the way, the compulsion had transformed into choice. And every day since, I'd chosen to stay. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because this complicated, unconventional love was the realest thing I'd ever known. And that made all the difference. 2 months later, June Olivia Helena Frary was born on June 23rd, after a considerably shorter labor than her brother's dramatic entrance. Gabriel held her with the same wonder he'd shown with Hugo, though this time with the confidence of experience. "She has your eyes," he observed. "She's 2 hours old. You can't tell that yet." "I can tell." He looked up at me, this man who'd forced his way into my life and somehow become my home. "Thank you. Again. For all of it. Stop thanking me. We made these children together. I'm not just thanking you for them. I'm thanking you for us, for giving me a chance to get it right." He carefully transferred Olivia to my arms. "I love you, Helena. More than I have words for." "I love you too," I said, looking at our daughter's perfect face. "Even when you're impossible." "Especially then," he corrected with a smile. "Especially then," I agreed. Hugo arrived with his grandparents an hour later, standing on tiptoe to peer at his new sister with solemn curiosity. "She's really small," he observed. "You were that small once," I told him. "Was I loud like her?" "Louder," Gabriel and I said in unison, making everyone laugh. As I watched my family gathered around, Gabriel with Hugo on his lap, explaining big brother responsibilities, my in-laws cooing over their new granddaughter, the future stretching ahead with all its beautiful uncertainty, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Peace, gratitude, joy. This was my life now. Not the one I'd planned, but the one I'd chosen. And it was perfect. And it